Hi everyone, this is Dr. Khatami. In this short video, we're going to have a quick review of the integumentary system, part of our human biology course. So the integumentary system actually composed of skin, which is the primary organ of the integumentary system, and it would be the largest and heaviest organ of the body. And also we have some accessory structures related to the integumentary system. Hair, nails, and glands would be part of our integumentary system. But what is the function of the integumentary system? Why do we have a skin and the other structures? So the first thing that you can remember, just imagine that our body without a skin. That looks scary, right? So the first thing that we can remember for the function of the skin or integumentary system is protection. So it's going to protect our body or the underlying tissue from trauma, pathogen invasion, and also water loss. So protection is the number one that we can remember. And also our skin is a help maintaining the body temperature. How? Because we have sweat glands in our skin, and also through the blood flow regulation we can regulate or maintain our body temperature at the normal value. And then also because in our skin we have different type of receptors, which the receptors are specialized structure detecting the changes like touch, temperature, pain, pressure. So we have these receptors found in our skin. So we can say the skin or integumentary system would be involved in our sensory perception, making us aware of our environment. And also do not forget the integumentary system or our skin in exposure of the sun can synthesize the vitamin D. Okay, now let's look at the skin and see what are the structure of the skin. So as you can see here, the skin is composed of two parts, the epidermis and the dermis. So this is the two part of the skin. So if I want to draw the skin right here, I'm going to draw the superficial or the top part of the skin, and I'm going to call this as epidermis. So the epidermis is the top layer. What is it? The epidermis actually is an epithelial tissue. And then the deep layer of our skin, it would be dermis layer, which dermis is made up of connective tissue. So we have epidermis and dermis, these two layers of the skin. But also we have another layer just under the skin. It's called subcutaneous layer. Sub means under, and cutaneous means skin. And that is a layer under the skin. It is not part of your skin. It's just a layer under your skin. Also, it's called hypodermis layer. And it's actually composed of the fat tissue. So we have fat tissue in the subcutaneous layer. So the subcutaneous layer or hypodermis, if you heard about the subcutaneous injection, that is a layer that they can inject something like insulin or any medication in small amounts under your skin, which is composed of many fat tissue. And also whenever they're doing the liposuction, they actually removing the fat from this layer, the subcutaneous layer. Okay, so then as you can see, the epidermis is composed of the epithelial tissue, and dermis is composed of the connective tissue, which you can find different structures here like muscle, glands, and hair follicle, the sensory receptors, blood vessels here. And now let's review the structure of the skin one more time together. So as we said, skin is an organ. Why? Because it's composed of different tissues. In the skin we can find epithelium, we can find connective tissue, even we can find muscle tissue and nervous tissue. So skin is a real organ. So we found these two regions for our skin: epidermis, the outermost layer, the top layer, which then this is an epithelial or epithelial tissue. Then the dermis, which is just under the epidermis, it contains the connective tissue and full of blood vessels, sweat glands, hair follicles, and muscle tissue. Then subcutaneous layer, as we said, is a fat tissue under the skin, and that is the part that we can do the subcutaneous injection or also removing fat tissue through the liposuction. Okay, now let's take a look at the cells of the epidermis. So as we said, epidermis is an epithelial tissue. What kind of epithelial tissue is that? It is keratinized, stratified, squamous epithelial tissue. We learned about the stratified squamous epithelial tissue before in the epithelial tissue parts. So stratified means we have many cells on top of many layer of cells on top of the basement membrane. We call this as a squamous because the top layers shape are flattened or squamous. We call this as keratinized because the top layer cells are dead and they were going to be filled with protein keratin. So that's the reason our epidermis can provide a waterproof barrier because of the keratin. And now let's see what are the cells can be found in this layer, in the epidermis layer or at the epithelial tissue of our skin. So we have these three different type of cells. We have keratinocytes, Langerhans cells, and melanocytes. So keratinocyte, the name of this cell is actually descriptive. It means the cells can produce keratin. Okay, so these cells located in the upper layer, these are actually the dead cells filled with keratin. They're producing keratin as well, forming a waterproof barrier. Langerhans cell, these are type of white blood cell. Actually, they are involved in an immune response. Whenever a pathogen coming to the skin, to the epidermis, they can capture them and send them to our immune system for immune reaction. And melanocytes are the cell producing melanin, the pigment we need for our skin color. And also melanin, it has another important job. They're going to make a protection against the UV light. So these are the three different type of cells we can find in the epidermis. So regarding the epidermis or like skin color, you should know that melanin is a pigment providing the skin color. So make sure you know, doesn't matter what is your skin color, light or dark, all the people have the same number of melanocytes. But their melanin production is different. So, and also the type of their melanin is different. So then the type of melanin and also the amount of melanin they're producing is different, but all the people, they have the same number of the melanocyte. And also in exposure of the sun, you can produce more melanin. That's the reason you can get tan in exposure of the sun, because you're going to stimulate your melanocyte to produce more melanin. And also there are two other like factors or pigment, they can be involved in skin color determination. We have keratin, which is a yellow-orange pigment found in tomato, in carrot, and hemoglobin, which is a red pigment found in blood cells. But the only pigment that our skin is going to produce them is melanin, and the melanin is the main pigment that can determine our skin color. And also we talked about the vitamin D production, which our epidermal cells can produce vitamin D when they're exposed to the sun or the UV rays. And vitamin D is very important because they actually help regulating the calcium and phosphate level in our body. Okay, now let's talk about the dermis. This is the deep layer of the skin. So this layer is a thick layer composed of the fibrous connective tissue, and so it means that in this dermis we can actually find different type of fibers, like collagen fiber gonna be found here, providing strength. Elastic fiber is gonna be found in the dermis layer, giving elasticity to the skin. There are too many blood vessels that they can nourish the skin and also help regulate the body temperature. We have the sensory receptor here in the dermis layer. The receptor can detect touch, pressure, pain, and also temperature. And then we have glands that producing sweat, and also glands that producing oil to like hydrate our skin and also the hair. So sweat glands and sebaceous glands are the glands going to be found in the epidermis. When we talked about the subcutaneous layer or hypodermis, we said actually it's not part of the skin. It's just a layer under the skin. So it's not technically part of the skin. Please do not forget. So it's just a layer of the fat tissue under the skin. So what is the reason we have the hypodermis layer under the skin? Because that is a energy source or energy storage, as in this layer we have a lot of the fat tissue, and also it's gonna function as insulation, help to regulate the body temperature, and also protection because it cushions the underlying organs and tissues. Speaking about the accessory structures of the skin, like hair and gland, so you can find the hair follicle here. The hair follicle gonna be found in the dermis layer. But the hair shaft is the part that you can see from the surface of the skin. But the hair follicle gonna be found in the dermis layer. Speaking about the hair follicle, there is structures connecting the hair follicle to the surface of the skin, which this is actually called arrector pili muscle. Do you remember I told you that in skin we can even find the muscle? Arrector pili muscle is a smooth muscle tissue. It means it's an involuntary muscle. We cannot have a conscious control contracting the arrector pili muscle. But I'm sure you got goosebumps before. Whenever you get cold or excited or embarrassed or kind of emotional, your hair stands upright. That's because of the contraction of the arrector pili muscle. Please don't forget the arrector pili muscle's function, and where can we find this? In our skin, connecting our hair follicle to the surface of the skin. And also you can see these glands, like we have sebaceous gland here. These are the oil glands producing sebum, and also here we have the sweat glands, which they producing sweat and release them to the surface of the skin. Now let's review this accessory structure of the skin. We talked about the hair follicle, which they're gonna be found in the dermis layer, producing the hair, but hair shaft is the part that you can see from the surface of the skin. We talked about the arrector pili muscle is a smooth muscle, small muscle, and also smooth muscle, which means that is involuntary muscle, attaches to the hair follicle, contraction causes goosebump. And then we talked about the oil gland or sebaceous gland producing sebum, and then it's gonna soften the hair and skin. And also in sebum we have the antibacterial factors, which they can retard the bacterial growth as well. But the inflammation of the sebaceous gland can make the acne can be like very disturbing during the puberty especially. And then sweat glands or sudoriferous gland, these are the glands also going to be found in the dermis layer. So their duct would be open to the skin surface, and they're acting to regulating or maintaining our body temperature through the sweat production. Whenever you get hot, so then these sweat glands are going to be activated, and by producing the sweat, which 99% of the sweat is water, they're going to kind of help regulating our body temperature or cool us down. Thank you so much for watching this short video, and good luck.